Welcome to this video tutorial on Python user-defined functions. Function is a block of code to perform a specific task. Python provides many built-in functions like print, len, etc. But you can also create your own functions. These functions are called user-defined functions. In Python, a function is defined using the def keyword, followed by the name of the function and a set of parentheses that may include parameters. The block of code inside the function is indented. Here is the basic syntax for defining a function in Python. You start with the def keyword followed by function name. Then you open parentheses. You type your parameters. And after that, you close the parentheses followed by colon. And once you hit enter, you make sure that you have an indented block called the function block, where you type in the statements that you would like to execute when you call the function that you've created. Below is an example of a simple function that takes a name as the parameter and prints out a greeting. Here we have the keyword def and greet, which is the function name, and inside the parentheses we have our parameter, which is the word name. The function will print the word hello and then name and exclamation mark. For example, if you try calling the function greet and you pass an argument called John, it's going to print out hello John. To return a value from a function, use the return statement. Below is an example of a function that takes two numbers as parameters and return their sum. We start with our usual def keyword followed by the function name. In this case, we call it add, which takes two parameters a and b. And the output, we use the return keyword followed by what you want that function to do, which is add a plus b. If you want to call that function, then we assign the output of that function to a variable called result. And to call the function itself, we say add, which is the function name. And inside the parentheses, we pass the arguments. And the arguments in this case is the number 3 and 4. So the expected result for that function would be 7. You can define a function with optional parameters by giving them default values. If a default value is provided for a parameter, the caller can choose to omit that argument. For example, we can define a function called greet, which takes the parameters name and greetings. But in this case, our greetings has been assigned a default value called hello. The function will print greetings, comma, name, and exclamation mark. So if, for example, we call the function greet and pass argument John, which is just the name, then it's going to print hello John. The reason is because it took the default greeting, which is hello, and the name of John that has been passed as argument and printed out hello John. On the other hand, if we print greet, we call the function greet and pass the argument John, which is the name, and pass another argument for greeting, then we'll print out hi John. The reason, the default value of greeting has been replaced with hi, and that's why it printed out hi John. We will now look at several examples involving Python user-defined functions. In this example, we will write a function that takes a list of numbers and returns the largest number in that list. The first thing we will do, we'll we'll define a function if find largest, which takes the parameters numbers, and the first thing we'll do, we will set the initial largest number to be the first element in that list. So we can say largest is numbers index 0. And then we want to iterate through the rest of the numbers and check if any of those numbers is greater than our current largest number. So we use a for loop to say for num in numbers. What do you want to do? If any of those numbers, or if num is larger than the current largest number, set it to be the new largest number. To do that, we use a if statement. So we say if num is greater than largest, what do? We assign that num to be the largest. So we say largest is now equal to num. And the loop will continue doing the same, taking one number at a time, comparing to the current largest number. And then once it finishes, it's going to return a certain value. So here is where we return the largest number after the for loop has ended. And here we use the keyword return keyword, and we return the largest number. So as you have seen, we've created a function called largest that takes in parameter called numbers, which is basically a list of numbers. And then we set the first number in that list to be the largest. And then now we check using a for loop if any of those numbers is greater than our current largest number. And if any of them is larger than our current number, then we assign that number to largest. We can go ahead and run this, make sure that we've done the correct thing. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to call the function. And how to call the function? We write the name of that function, which is find largest, and open parenthesis and close, and then we pass in a list. We can try 1, 2, 3 and see what will be the largest number. So if I run that, I get 3, which means that it's returning the maximum in that list. We can try another example. We call that function find largest. Once we find the largest, and then we pass in a list, we can say 10, 20, maybe 5, and then maybe 50. Let's see if it's going to return 50 as the largest number. Wow, we're getting the largest number to be 50. And suppose now we pass some negative values in there. What happens? So if we say find largest, and then we pass some negative values, negative 5, negative maybe 4, negative 60, and maybe 0. let's see what we get in this case. So if I execute that, I get 0 to be the largest number. So our function is working well because it's just giving us the maximum in that list. Actually, we might be able to modify this using the functions that we already have in in Python. For example, you can just copy and paste this here, insert a new cell. Instead of having all this, we can get rid of all this and just use a return. And then here, we can simply say return max of numbers. So if I execute this again and insert a cell and check, I can use the same example I used here. And if I call that function now, this, which is very short, what do we get? We get 50. So basically, this one is a longer version, but in programming, it's so much better to be lazy and just use a simple way of doing things. We just use 2 lines to declare that variable, which will give us the maximum in that list, as opposed to using all these lines. In this second example, we will write a function that takes a list of strings and returns a new list with all strings in uppercase. To begin, we define a function called to uppercase, and takes the parameter strings, and the first thing we'll do is we will initialize an empty list that we are going to store the uppercase strings. So what we do is say upper strings, we assign it an empty list. Then the next thing we do, we'll iterate through the list of strings using a for loop. So we can say for s, let the strings in that string be called s in our list of strings, and for each s, what do you want to do? We want to convert them to uppercase, and after converting them to uppercase, we append them to the list that we created, the new list in this case. So to achieve that, you'll say our new list is called upper strings, and we want to append. We use the append function, and then for each string in that list of strings that we'll pass to the function, we convert them to uppercase. And to convert them to uppercase, we use the function upper. So that's why we are saying s.upper. Then, after we convert them to uppercase and append them to the new list of strings, then we need to return the list of uppercase strings after the for loop has completed. That's why we need to make sure that we are outside that loop. And to make sure that we are outside the loop, we check the indentation. It should be in the same indentation as the for loop. And here is where we use our keyword return so that you can return the upper string, which is the list of the new uppercase strings. And basically, just like that, we have created our function that will take list of strings and return a new list with all strings in uppercase. And we can go ahead and call the function. We execute this function that we've created and we call it in the next cell. And we can use a simple example as ABC. So to call it, that's the name of our function. And then here is the list that we've passed as an argument. So we have that list in there and we expect our function to convert it to uppercase. And let's see, moment of truth. Yes, has been converted to uppercase. All of them have been converted to uppercase. We can try another example that can convert towards hello and world to uppercase. So you have that. If you execute that, we find that everything has been converted to uppercase. And now we can also have another example. But for this example, I want us to make some sort of adjustment and write some numbers in between, maybe those strings. If I execute this, you realize that everything else has been converted to upper, but the numbers just remain the same. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Please also do remember to subscribe, share and like my videos.